My name is Sophia. I am 30. At 9:47 p.m. on December 22nd, I was standing outside my parents' house in Ann Arbor in 19-degree weather, staring at the lights blazing through every window. Christmas lights, string lights, the warm amber glow of a chandelier I'd paid for. When my phone buzzed with a text from my mother that read, "The Christmas party has been canceled. Don't come." I was already there. I was already standing on the porch I'd repainted in October, my breath fogging in front of my face, my overnight bag on the step beside me. Through the front window, I could see the silhouette of at least 30 people moving around inside. I could hear music. I could hear laughter. My sister Mallory's laugh, loud, bright, unmistakable, cut right through the glass. I knocked anyway. Nobody answered. I knocked again, harder this time, and the laughter inside paused for exactly 4 seconds before someone turned the music up louder. I stood there for 11 minutes. I counted. Then I picked up my bag, walked back to my car, and sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and the heat not running, and my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went pale. I didn't cry, I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in the dark looking at my own house. The house I had grown up in, the house my parents lived in rent-free because I paid the $2,200 mortgage every single month, and I made a decision. I was done being quiet. Before I tell you the rest of this, if stories about people who finally stopped apologizing for things they didn't do mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time it is there. Because this story is for anyone who has ever been locked out of a room they built with their own hands. Now, let me explain how I got to that porch. So, 3 years before that December night, my life looked like something I'd drawn on a napkin at 22 and somehow actually built. I owned 3 retail stores in Ann Arbor, home goods and lifestyle goods, the kind of place that smells like cedar and good candles, the kind of place where people buy wedding gifts and birthday presents and things for themselves they don't technically need but somehow can't leave without. I'd opened the first one at 26 with $40,000 in savings and a lease on a 1,800 square foot space on West Liberty Street. By 28, I had the second location on Packard and the third near Carytown. Combined, the 3 stores were doing $1.3 million in annual revenue. I was proud of that. I'd built it without a business degree, without a safety net, without anyone handing me anything. What I did have, eventually, was Clark. Let me take you back 4 years to the night I met my husband. It was October, and I was at a Chamber of Commerce event in a rented room above a wine bar on Fifth Avenue downtown. I was there because someone told me networking was important, and I was trying to believe them. I was wearing a blazer I'd had since college, and I was holding a glass of sparkling water, pretending it was something more interesting, when a man in a very well-cut gray suit appeared beside me and said without any preamble, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." His name was Clark. He was a corporate attorney. He had a way of listening that made you feel like your words were being carefully cataloged and kept somewhere safe. We talked for 3 hours. We closed the bar down. He walked me to my car in the rain and gave me his umbrella and didn't ask for anything in return. 8 months later, we were married. Clark was the person who helped me formalize everything. The business structure, the tax filings, the vendor agreements. He was the one who sat across the kitchen table from me on a Tuesday night in March and said, very carefully, "Sophia, I need you to look at these numbers with me." I remember he put his hand over mine before he opened the laptop. I didn't understand why at the time. I do now. But that comes later. First, I have to tell you about what my parents did to me before I even knew to look. When I opened the first store, I was doing everything myself. Inventory, scheduling, vendor calls, display setups, customer service. I slept 4 hours a night for the first 8 months. By the time I opened the second location, I knew I needed help. Real help. Operational help. My parents were retired. My father, Clayton, had spent 25 years in manufacturing management. My mother, Jocelyn, had run the administrative office of a dental practice for 15 years. They knew systems. They knew how to manage people, track expenses, interface with vendors. When I asked them to step in and help manage operations across the 3 stores, I thought I was doing something smart. I thought I was keeping it in the family, the way people always say you should. My mother cried when I asked her. She said, "Sophia, we are so proud of you. We would do anything to support what you've built." I gave them signing authority on 2 of the business accounts. I gave them access to the vendor payment system. I trusted them with the operational budget for all 3 locations, roughly $340,000 annually between payroll, inventory, maintenance, and overhead. And then I went back to doing what I did, growing the business, building relationships with suppliers, expanding the product lines. For about 18 months, everything seemed fine. Then the numbers started to feel wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not the kind of wrong that triggers an alarm. The kind of wrong that sits at the edge of your vision and makes you feel slightly nauseous at 2 a.m. when you're reviewing monthly summaries. Revenue was strong, but the operational expenses were higher than they should have been for what I was seeing in the stores. Maintenance costs, in particular. We were being billed, month after month, for HVAC servicing, exterior cleaning, equipment repair, services I wasn't authorizing and increasingly couldn't find evidence of. I mentioned it to my mother once, casually, over the phone. "Oh, that's the new vendor Clayton found," she said. "Very reliable, very thorough." I said I'd like to meet them. She said she'd set something up. She never did. It was February of last year when my sister Mallory called me crying. This was not unusual. Mallory had been what my parents called going through a rough patch for the better part of 3 years, by which they meant she had a gambling problem that had quietly swallowed her savings, her apartment deposit, 2 personal loans, and at least 2 relationships. My parents talked about it in soft, careful voices, like it was something that had simply happened to Mallory, like weather, something nobody could have predicted or stopped. That February afternoon, Mallory called me from what she said was a gas station parking lot, crying so hard I could barely make out the words. "Sophia, I'm in real trouble. I don't know what to do. I owe I owe money to people, and if I can't pay them back by the end of the month..." "How much?" I said. $45,000. I went very still. "Mallory, I know, okay? I know how it sounds, but please, please, Sophia, if I could just borrow, if it could be an investment. You've been saying you want to expand. Dad has this real estate contact. There's a property in Ypsilanti that could..." "Stop," I said. "Stop. Okay, let me think." I didn't give her $45,000. But over the next 3 weeks, my parents called me no fewer than 12 times about it. They called it a family emergency. They called it a real estate opportunity. They called it the least I could do given how much they'd sacrificed for me. My father's voice got quieter and quieter the angrier he got, that particular compression that meant he was choosing his words like weapons. "You have 3 successful stores," he said on the last call, at 7:22 in the evening on a Tuesday. "You can afford this. You just don't want to help your own sister." "Dad, I can't pull $45,000 out of the business." "You mean you won't?" "I mean it's not my money to give. It belongs to the business, to the employees. That's what I've always said about you." His voice dropped another degree. "The moment you got something, you forgot where you came from." I didn't say anything. My face went hot. My throat closed. "She's your sister, Sophia." My mother's voice came on. They'd had me on speaker the whole time. "She needs you. Family needs you. Or does your business matter more than your own blood?" I said I would think about it. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, I wired $15,000 from my personal savings into Mallory's account. Not a loan, not an investment. I did it because I was exhausted from being accused of not caring, and because some part of me still believed that if I just helped enough, they would finally stop looking at me like I was the problem. What I did not know, what I had no way of knowing, was that by the time I wired that $15,000, my parents had already stolen more than 11 times that amount from my business. Ako ay Clark noticed the HVAC invoices first. This is the part of the story where I have to tell you who Clark really is, because he's not just my husband. He's a corporate attorney who has spent 12 years doing exactly one thing: finding the financial paperwork that people hope no one will look at closely enough. He does it for corporations. He does it in litigation. He is very, very good at it. He didn't say anything to me right away when he noticed. That's important. He didn't come to me with accusations or theories. He just asked me one Tuesday night in March, calmly with his hand over mine, if I would let him do a full audit of the vendor payments across all 3 stores, going back 14 months. Why? I asked. He looked at me for a moment. Because I think the HVAC company your parents are using doesn't exist, he said. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't from exhaustion. It was because something in my chest had gone very cold and very still. And I was beginning to understand, in the way you understand things you've been not quite looking at for months, what I was about to find out. Clark spent 11 days on the audit. He worked at night, at the kitchen table, with a yellow legal pad and a highlighter and multiple browser tabs of business registration databases. He didn't ask me questions while he worked. He just worked. On the 12th day, he set a binder on the table in front of me. It was 2 inches thick. He sat down across from me and said, "You should know that what I'm about to tell you is going to feel impossible, but I have documentation for every single item." The binder contained 14 months of banking statements across all 3 business accounts. It contained 47 invoices from 4 different vendor companies, all of them registered to addresses that were either vacant lots, mail forwarding services, or, in one case, a closed laundromat on the east side of Detroit. The vendor companies had names like Premium Property Maintenance Solutions, LLC, and Apex Facility Services Group, the kind of bureaucratically plausible names that don't raise flags until someone actually tries to look them up. Clark had looked them up. None of them had employees. None of them had reviews, licenses, or any operational history. But all of them had one thing in common: their business bank accounts, the accounts that received payment for the fake services, were registered to 2 names I knew: Clayton Hargrove, Jocelyn Hargrove. Between them, those 4 phantom vendor accounts had collected $287,400 from my business over 14 months. And on 12 separate occasions, spanning the same 14-month period, money had moved from those vendor accounts into a third account, one registered to Mallory Hargrove, in amounts ranging from $8,500 to $23,000, Mallory's account, where it had then, according to the transaction logs Clark had subpoenaed, been transferred in lump sums to 2 online casino platforms. I sat at that kitchen table and I read the binder from the first page to the last. It took me 2 hours and 40 minutes. Clark sat with me the whole time. He didn't say anything. He just let me read. When I finished, I closed the binder and put my hands flat on top of it and looked at the wall above the kitchen sink for a long time. $287,400, I said. Yes. In 14 months. Yes. I thought about my mother crying when I asked her to help manage the stores. I thought about her saying, "We would do anything to support what you've built." I thought about my father's voice going quiet and compressed on the phone. "The moment you got something, you forgot where you came from." I thought about Mallory at the gas station, crying so hard she could barely speak. I thought about the $15,000 I'd wired from my own savings because I was tired of being accused of not caring. "Okay," I said. My voice was very level. I was surprised by how level it was. "What do we do?" Clark reached across the table and opened the binder to a page I hadn't seen. The last page behind a divider. It was a 1-page memo in his handwriting. "We wait," he said, "and we choose our moment." The moment chose itself. The annual corporate appreciation gala was something I'd started in year 2 of the business. A night to thank the vendors, investors, and community partners who had helped make the stores what they were. We held it at the Marquette Grand Hotel Ballroom on South Main Street. Round tables dressed in white linen, a stage with a podium, and a large projection screen. 212 guests. Business partners. Investors. The people whose trust and relationships had built everything I had. I'd sent invitations to my parents in October, as I did every year. They were, after all, still listed as operational managers on my business accounts. My parents had attended the previous two galas. They had smiled and shaken hands and accepted compliments on behalf of a business they had not built. This year, my mother called me 3 days before the event, effusive and warm in a way that always made me feel slightly off balance. "We're so excited for the gala, sweetheart. Your father has a wonderful surprise announcement prepared. Something about expanding the branch management structure. We thought it would be a perfect moment to make it official in front of everyone." I said that sounded great. I smiled when I said it. Clark, who was sitting 2 feet away from me on the couch and could hear every word, looked at me and nodded once. The night of the gala, December 18th, I arrived at the Marquette Grand at 5:30 p.m., 90 minutes before guests. I walked the room with our AV coordinator, a young woman named Priya, who handled all my audio-visual needs for events. I showed her the slideshow. I explained the sequence. I told her that at a specific point in the evening, after my father took the podium, she should switch the input from the standard presentation to the folder labeled simply Audit on the laptop. Priya looked at the first few slides in that folder. She looked at me. "Are you sure?" she said. "Yes," I said. She nodded. She said, "Okay, Sophia." I went to the hotel bar and drank a glass of sparkling water and watched the room fill up. My parents arrived at 6:48 p.m. My father was in a navy suit I didn't recognize. New, expensive. My mother wore a red dress that caught the light. Mallory was with them in a green wrap dress, her hair done up, laughing at something her phone was showing her as she walked through the ballroom doors. They looked good. They looked comfortable. They looked like people who had absolutely nothing to be afraid of. I watched my father work the room. Handshakes, backslaps, the particular brand of warm authority that comes naturally to men who are very good at performing competence. I watched my mother lean in close to the wives of business partners, touching their arms, laughing in the right places. I watched Mallory find the bar. I said hello to 212 guests. I smiled. I ate nothing. My stomach was a closed fist. At 8:15 p.m., I took the podium. "Good evening," I said. "Thank you for being here." 4 years ago, I signed a lease on 1,800 square feet on West Liberty Street and told myself that if I could just make rent for 12 months, I'd consider it a success. Tonight, we're celebrating year 4 of 3 stores, $4.7 million in cumulative revenue, and, most importantly, the relationships in this room that made every bit of it possible. Thank you, genuinely, from the floor of my heart. Applause. Warm, generous, real. Before I turn this over for our partner acknowledgments, I'm going to invite my father, Clayton Hargrove, to the podium. He has an announcement he's been looking forward to making. I stepped back. I met my father's eyes across the room. He was already smiling. He buttoned his jacket as he walked to the stage, confident and unhurried. The kind of walk that says, "This is what I was built for." He shook my hand at the podium. His grip was firm, his eyes were bright. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "I want to take a moment to say how proud, how genuinely proud, this family is of what Sophia has built. She is expanding tonight, and we are so proud to announce that Sophia is finally bringing the branch management structure into the next chapter. Our family has been honored to be part of this journey every step of the way." Applause. My father smiled wider, and then the screen behind him changed. Priya made the switch at 8:23 p.m., exactly when I had told her to. One moment the screen showed the Sophia's home company logo on a clean white background. The next moment it showed a spreadsheet. 14 months of banking statements, vendor account names, dollar amounts, transfer dates. The first murmur moved through the room like a current, low, confused. The sound of 200 people simultaneously trying to understand what they were looking at. My father turned to look at the screen. His smile did not fall immediately. It took approximately 4 seconds. I counted. Then he turned back to the room, and the smile was gone, and his face had gone the color of old chalk. "What is—" he started. The slide changed. The next one showed the vendor registrations. Premium Property Maintenance Solutions, LLC, Apex Facility Services Group, the registered addresses, the vacant lots, the mail forwarding services, the closed laundromat. Then the next slide, the names on the receiving accounts, Clayton Hargrove, Jocelyn Hargrove. The room had gone very quiet. My mother made a sound, not quite a word, not quite a gasp. She was at a table near the front, and I watched her reach out and grip the arm of the woman sitting next to her, a vendor named Patrice who ran a distribution company out of Saline. Patrice looked down at my mother's hand on her arm and then looked at the screen and did not say anything. "I can explain this," my father said into the microphone. His voice had lost its warmth. It was compressed now, that cold, tight quality I knew. "This is being taken out of context." The slide changed again. Transfer logs, 12 transactions, dates, amounts, receiving account, Mallory Hargrove. And then below that, the casino platform transaction confirmations printed from the platform's own records by Clark's office 3 weeks prior. Mallory made a sound from somewhere to my left. I didn't look at her. "These documents," my father said, louder now, the microphone picking up something that might have been desperation, "were taken without authorization from private business records." "They are the business records," I said. I was standing at the edge of the stage. I had not moved to the microphone. I didn't need to. The room was completely silent, and my voice carried without effort. "Clark obtained them through proper legal process over the past 2 months," I said. "Every item on that screen is time-stamped, sourced, and verified. The complete filing is with our attorney and has been submitted to the Washtenaw County District Attorney's Office as of December 15th. My father opened his mouth. He closed it. "The 4 vendor companies listed on that screen do not exist," I said. "They never provided services to any of my locations. The accounts they were paid from were business operating accounts. The accounts that received those payments are registered in my parents' names, and the transfers from those accounts to my sister's account, and from her account to online gambling platforms, are documented in that binder on the front table." I paused. $287,400, I said, "over 14 months. The number hung in the air of that ballroom the way numbers do when everyone in the room is doing the same math at the same time and arriving at the same conclusion. Patrice, the distribution vendor from Saline, pulled her arm away from my mother's hand very slowly and folded her hands in her own lap. A man named Gerald, who ran the investment group that had helped finance my second location, pushed his chair back slightly from the table. My father was still at the podium. His mouth was moving. No sound was coming out. "Clayton," it was my mother's voice, from the front table, low, urgent. "Clayton, come sit down." "I'm not—" He gripped the podium. This family has sacrificed everything for this girl. Everything. And she stands up here and The documents speak for themselves," I said. Calm. I was very calm. I don't fully understand even now how calm I was. "I'm not here tonight to accuse my family," I said, to the room, to 212 people who were very still and very quiet. "I'm here to be honest with the people who have trusted me with their partnerships and their investment. You deserve to know what has happened inside this business. You deserve the truth. And I owed it to every person in this room to stand up here and give it to you." I looked at my father one more time. He had let go of the podium. He looked older than I had ever seen him look. He looked like the chalk color had gone all the way through him. "I'm sorry you had to hear this at an event that was meant to be a celebration," I said to the room. It still is, in a way. This business is still standing. Your partnerships are still honored, and I intend to keep building. Then I stepped off the stage. I did not look at my parents again. I did not look at Mallory. I walked to the back of the ballroom, picked up my coat from the coat check, and walked out into the December air on South Main Street. It was 22 degrees. My breath came out in clouds. I could hear, faintly through the hotel walls, the sound of the room behind me beginning to exhale. Voices, chairs, the low murmur of 200 people processing what they had just witnessed. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Marquette Grand for about 90 seconds. Then I got in my car and drove home. Clark was waiting at the kitchen table when I got home. He had his tie loosened and a cup of tea made for each of us. He looked up when I came in. "How did it go?" he said. I took my coat off. I hung it on the hook by the door. I sat down across from him and wrapped my hands around the mug. "They were so sure," I said. "They walked in there so sure." Clark nodded. "Your dad looked good," he said carefully. "Navy suit." "New," I said. "I didn't recognize it." He nodded again. We sat there for a long time in the quiet kitchen, with the tea and the small lamp above the sink, and the sound of the heat coming through the vents, and I let the whole night settle into me without trying to name it yet. "You okay?" Clark said. "I will be," I said. I meant it. I need to go back briefly and tell you what had brought me to that gala with a folder called Audit and 212 witnesses. Because Clark's binder was not the only thing I had walked in there with. 6 weeks before the gala, Clark came home from his office with a sealed envelope and set it on the table between us without explanation. "It's from your grandmother's attorney," he said. "Margaret's attorney. He's been holding it." She told him to wait until there was his words, a moment of reckoning. My grandmother Margaret had passed away 2 years prior. She'd been the sharpest person I had ever known, small, bird-like, with reading glasses she wore pushed up on her forehead even when she didn't need them, and a filing system that her attorney described, at her will reading, as almost alarming in its thoroughness. She had watched my family dynamics with quiet, precise attention for decades. She had never said much about it, but she had apparently been very busy. I sat down. I opened the envelope. "Dear Sophia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and your parents have already started doing what I knew they would do once you had something worth taking. I'm sorry I couldn't stop it while I was alive. I tried, in the small ways I could, but Clayton and Jocelyn don't hear reason. They hear access. And the moment you gave them access to that business, the clock started. Do you remember the summer you were 12, when we stayed up past midnight at the kitchen table playing cards, and I told you that the only thing a crooked person fears is a paper trail? You laughed and said, 'Grandma, you're so dramatic.' I said, 'No, sweetheart. I'm prepared.' I meant it. I have been watching your parents' financial patterns for 11 years. What I have documented and left with my attorney, Harrison Cole. His office is at 412 Elm Park Drive, Ann Arbor, 48103. Is not complete on its own. It is the foundation. What Clark finds will be the structure. Together they will hold. Inside this envelope, my signed and notarized witness statement, documenting 3 separate occasions on which I personally observed Clayton representing your business accounts as personal income to third parties. A letter from my own accountant attesting to a pattern of financial misrepresentation I reported to him in 2019. A copy of a loan agreement signed by Clayton in which he borrowed $18,000 from me in 2020 and identified the source of his forthcoming repayment as income from your business operations. Income that was never his to claim, and $40,000 held in a separate account with Harrison Cole, designated solely for your legal costs and whatever comes next. You are not ungrateful. You are not selfish. You are not too proud to ask for help, which is what they always said about you. But they said it to keep you from asking anyone who might tell you the truth. You are the person who built 3 stores from nothing at 26. That's who you are. All my love, always. Your card shark, your co-conspirator, your grandmother, Margaret. I read that letter 4 times. Sitting at the kitchen table with Clark across from me and the lamp on above the sink, I read it until the words stopped swimming and held still. Then I set it down very carefully and I said, "She knew." "She knew," Clark said. I put my face in my hands for a minute. Not crying. Something else. Something that doesn't have a clean name. The feeling of being loved very precisely, from very far away, by someone who had understood the situation with more clarity than I had, and who had quietly built a safety net for me out of notarized documents and $40,000 in legal fees, and a letter she'd written when I was maybe 24, and asked a man named Harrison Cole to hold until the moment was right. I thought about her at the kitchen table, her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. No, sweetheart, I'm prepared. I stayed at that table for a long time after Clark went to bed. Cake. The weeks that followed the gala were strange in the particular way that aftermath always is. Too quiet in some places, too loud in others. Gerald from the investment group called me on December 20th. He was professional, direct, and loyal in a way I hadn't expected. He said his group was not withdrawing its partnership and that he hoped I knew they considered the matter a reflection on my family, not on my business. He also mentioned, quietly, that he'd been somewhat suspicious of my father's branch management language at previous events and was glad to finally understand what had been going on. 3 of my other major vendor partners sent emails of support in the week following. 2 of them, independently, offered introductions to additional investors. I thanked them all. I meant it. On December 23rd, the day after I had stood on that porch in the cold watching the lights through the window, I received a call from the Washtenaw County District Attorney's Office confirming receipt of Clark's full financial documentation and informing me that a formal investigation had been opened. I said thank you. I wrote down the case number. I hung up and sat in my car for 3 minutes doing nothing. By mid-January, my parents had retained a criminal defense attorney. Mallory had, according to a mutual acquaintance who reached out cautiously over text, enrolled in an outpatient program. I don't know if she did this out of genuine desire or fear of what the investigation might uncover. I have chosen, for now, not to try to know. My father called me once, in early January, from a number I didn't recognize. I answered by accident. He started to speak. "Sophia, I need you to understand that the situation was..." And I said very calmly, "Clayton, you need to speak with my attorney." And I hung up. I sat with my phone in my hand afterward and waited to feel something big. Guilt, rage, grief. Something cinematic. I felt tired. Mostly, I felt tired. And underneath the tired, something that was not quite peace but was adjacent to it. The particular quiet that lives on the other side of a very long silence, finally broken. I went and made coffee. And I stood at the kitchen window and drank it while the January light came through gray and thin over the backyard. It's June now, 6 months since the gala. The investigation is ongoing and I've been advised not to discuss specifics, so I won't. What I can tell you is what my life looks like from where I'm standing. The 3 stores are still open. In April, I brought in an operations manager, a woman named Denise, who has 20 years of retail management experience and a frankly intimidating system for vendor oversight. The Carytown location had its best month on record in May. I'm in conversations about a 4th location, though I'm moving slowly. I want to be sure this time. I want to know exactly who is touching what. Clark and I bought a house in February. Not big, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window above the sink, a backyard that gets good afternoon light. There's a garden bed along the south fence that the previous owners planted with lavender, and I've been learning, very slowly, how to maintain it. Clark says I talk to the plants. I do not confirm or deny this. On the desk in my home office, there is a photograph. It's from the summer I was 12, me and my grandmother Margaret at her kitchen table, playing cards. She has her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. I'm laughing about something. We're both leaning in over the table like the game matters, like we're both completely present in that moment. I had it framed in February. I put it on the desk where I can see it when I'm working. Some days I look at it and I think about how much she knew and how long she waited and how carefully she built the thing that would eventually hold me up. And I think about the word prepared, what it means to love someone so specifically that you spend years doing paperwork in their honor. I visit her grave on the first Saturday of every month. I bring flowers from whatever's at the market, whatever looks good that week. I stand there for a few minutes. I don't always say anything out loud, but I always say the same thing in my head before I leave. I got it, Grandma. I'm okay. The paper trail held. There's something I want to say to you directly if you're still with me. I spent a long time believing that the way to earn my family's love was to make myself useful enough, to give enough, help enough, absorb enough, explain myself enough. I thought that if I could just demonstrate, clearly, irrefutably, that I deserved their good opinion, I would eventually receive it. What I know now is this: people who use your love as a mechanism of extraction don't want your success. They want your compliance, and when you stop complying, they call it betrayal. They called me selfish. They called me ungrateful. They said I'd forgotten where I came from. What they meant was, you're no longer useful in the way we need you to be. That's not family. That's leverage. And the moment I understood the difference, truly understood it, not just intellectually, but in my chest, in the cold outside that lit up house with my phone still showing my mother's text, was the moment I stopped trying to earn something that was never on offer. Here's what I want to know from you. If you have ever given someone everything you had and still been told it wasn't enough, type "still not enough" in the comments. Or if you've reached the point where you finally decided to stop trying to prove yourself to people who have already decided who you are, type "I stopped proving" in the comments. Both are a kind of survival. Both are braver than they look from the outside. And if this story meant something to you, check the description. There are more stories there, told the same way, honest, from the inside out. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Take care of yourselves out there.